So hi, everybody. My name is Suzanne Grossman. I am the Director of Career Services at the Marxe School of Public and International Affairs at Brooklyn College, part of the City University of New York. And this is a NASPAA Employer Relations event we're doing with the United Nations. We're very excited about. So we have schools represented from around the country in public administration, public policy, and more. And we're glad that you could be here today. We did an earlier event not too long ago with the United Nations team about mid-career professionals. And this event is targeted for early career. And we're really happy that the UN team was able to come back and talk to all of you. And they're going to present, and there'll be plenty of time for Q&A in the chat a little bit later. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joan Ampa from the UN team to take it away. Thanks, Joan.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. We are very excited to be here. Let's begin. Selena's going to share the screen. So as Suzanne said, this is UN Careers Information Session. We will focus on early career professionals, which I know you're all very eager to learn about. So without further ado, let's begin.
Can you see my screen, Joe?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh.
So let's introduce ourselves a little bit. We are from the United Nations headquarters in New York, actually not far from Baruch College. And Selena and I actually Baruch alumni from many years ago. So we are right at home. We are with a team called Talent Outreach, which is part of the Office of Human Resources at the United Nations. My name is Joan Ampa. I'm an HR officer. So here with Selena Brown, another HR associate, and we have two interns, Lorena Wendell, who is joining us all the way this afternoon from Brazil, and Zara Farouk, who is in Washington, correct? Or is it Virginia? Yes, Washington. Interning also with us. So welcome everyone, and let's go ahead and proceed. Okay, so a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. First, we'll start giving you an overview of the UN global system, and then tell you about what we do, what is our mandate, what is the UN about, and then describe the skills we need and fields of study, what are the soft skills, etc. And then focus on the job entry points. Then we'll give you some information about the benefits and entitlements, and then tips on the application and interview process. After that, we will open up the floor for conversations on early careers. So let's go ahead to the next slide. This you see on your screen is actually a map available online. It's the United Nations system. And every time we go to events, we like to share this map to give you an idea that we are, the United Nations is a very big international organization of many agencies, funds, programs, different entities. And so we want you to broaden your search when you look for jobs at the United Nations, because the possibilities are endless. For us, as I mentioned, we are from the Secretariat. So if you look at the blue outline on your screen, for the Secretariat alone, there are many departments and offices. So depending on your field, there's so many areas you can work. For example, Department of Global Communications, if you're in public information, the Department of Office of Humanitarian Affairs, human rights, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, if you're in statistics, economics, etc. So many departments. OLA, Office of Legal Affairs, if you're in the legal field, Department of Peace Operations, Department of Political Affairs, so you get the idea. And then of course we have the specialized agencies. For example, the World Health Organization that is fighting the pandemic. It's a UN entity. We have the Food and Agricultural Organization. We have the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, et cetera, et cetera. And the Secretariat alone, we also have the regional commissions, which are in other areas around the world. So on the next slide, and also don't forget the specialized agencies. I'm sure you've heard about UNICEF, UNDP, UNOPS, UN Women, etc. So this map here it shows you where the Secretariat alone is located around the world. We're in North and South America, we're in Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. So it tells you no matter where in the world you want to work, there is likely a United Nations office for you to go and explore and start your career. So proceeding along, you've heard about the member states. Within the United Nations, we have 193 member countries. And what are the types of work we do? We're in peacekeeping operations, human rights, humanitarian affairs, and economic and social development. And these areas are very broad because it touches on so many things, which led us to an initiative called the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. What is the SDG, as we like to call it? Next. So for the Sustainable Development Goals, these are key priority areas that are tied into the mandates. It's all about improving the welfare of the global citizens in these 17 key priority areas. And we hope to do this not just for today, but to engage in these initiatives that we hope will last and benefit for generations to come. So we believe that the more you improve everyone's quality of life and well-being, the least likely there is for war and civil unrest. And so we aim to promote prosperity for all in areas such as alleviating poverty and hunger, good health, providing good health and well-being, quality education, make sure there's gender equality and reduce inequalities in all areas. For example, racial inequalities, religious inequalities, etc. And also you've heard about climate action. That's very big in the UN's agenda, promoting decent work and economic growth. Example, partnership for strong institutions, life on land, etc., etc. So there is a strong need to work on all these initiatives. And we hope, and this is a partnership between UN entities that I spoke about, the agencies, funds, and programs, different governments, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders. We have a short video that I want to play that will give you in a nutshell. This video was actually launched in 2015 at the beginning of this program, and we hope to achieve this by the year 2030.
This September, 193 countries will meet at the UN to adopt new global goals. These 17 goals provide a roadmap that will help the world achieve sustainable development. But what exactly is sustainable development and how does it affect us? Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. But what does that mean? Everyone understands the need to grow their economies, but not everyone takes into account the negatives that unbalanced economic growth can have on the environment and on people's well-being. It's time to change that by looking at the world in a different way. The Sustainable Development Goals will help us to do that. Sustainable development is about the big picture. It's about improving the lives of everyone, everywhere, and achieving all these things together. But it's also about the details. That means we want economies to grow, companies to thrive, and people to have decent work. We want to create new, innovative technologies, but not by harming the environment. We want everyone to have access to nutritious food regardless of where they live. We want affordable and quality education for everybody, not just a few. We want freedom of speech, but we don't want that to mean violence. But how can we achieve all of this, and where do we even start? Well, the 17 goals will mean member states, alongside civil society stakeholders and major groups, will be working together for the next 15 years, looking at ways we can do business differently so that everyone gains. With these 17 global goals as our guide, we can achieve sustainable development and live in a world where people and planet benefit. But we have to act now. This is the time for global action. To find out how you can get involved and learn more about the goals, go to www.un.org/sustainable development.
All right, so in a nutshell, that's what the UN is doing. It's so many important initiatives. And with that, we need experts in so many fields and a diverse workforce. So right now, I will invite our beautiful intern, Zara, to speak to you a little bit about the diverse workforce that we look for, and also the specialties, fields of studies that we look for. Thank you. Over to you, Zara.
Thank you, Joan. Good morning, everybody. So at the UN, we prioritize, and the UN Secretariat has boosted its efforts in promoting gender representation, equal representation of women in the workforce, geographical representation, and disability inclusion. With regard to disability inclusion, this is an extremely important aspect that the UN is very proactive about in terms of providing reasonable accommodation to people of all abilities, and that's an outcome of creating a space and a culture that invites applicants of all backgrounds and abilities. In terms of reasonable accommodation, we provide special equipment or building facilities and resources that support anyone that is interested in a career with the United Nations. In addition to this, language plays an extremely important role within the organization. The UN has 6 official languages, which are English, French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic, and 2 working languages, which are English and French. So if you speak English, that's a baseline, that's great. Be sure to include any languages that you speak in your application, because that's extremely important and highly valued within the organization. Thanks, Selena. So over here, we'd like to get to know our audience a little bit better, and we'd like to know what field best describes your career interests. So I'd ask each of you now to log and join, to open up slido.com and input the code that's displayed on the screen right now, and answer this question based on what your field of interest is, so we have an understanding of who our audience is with us today. Okay, so we're seeing some results on the screen now. So we're seeing a lot of economic and okay. Okay. So we have political, peace, and humanitarian being the majority right now. Okay. Very interesting. So this is for us to get a better idea of our audience's interests, but also to discuss the job networks that the UN has available that cater to different types of positions and interests. So right now we have political, peace, and humanitarian, economic and social development that are clearly leading right now. Selena, if you could move on to the next slide. So the UN offers 9 different job networks and 47 job families. So we have positions that are posted to each of these 9 that you see displayed on the screen. And each of these 9 networks feature positions that are related and fall under a specific category. So for example, the majority of each of you chose the economic, social, and development. You have an interest in that. So DevNet it features positions that are linked to sustainable development, economic affairs, and public administration. Then we have Public Information and Conference Management Network, which is called InfoNet, which features positions that are related to public information positions, language positions, and conference services. iTechNet is the Information and Telecommunication Technology Network, and positions are posted to that are related to media technology, telecommunications technology, and information management systems and technology. The Legal Network position LegalNet features positions that are related to law-related positions. LodgeNet is our logistics, transportation, and supply chain network, which features positions that are related to engineering, procurement, and logistics and supply chain, to name a few. Next, Magnet, which is the management and administration network, which features positions linked to finance, audit, human resources, and administration. Political Peace and Humanitarian Network, which is called POLNet, which features political affairs, humanitarian affairs, and human rights related positions. So as you see on the screen, these are the 9 main networks, and they're extremely beneficial to use if you're interested in a career in the United Nations. So what I would encourage is that to really look into your career interest, what fields of interest are pertinent to you, and which apply to your academic background. Thank you. I'll pass it now to Joan.
Okay, thank you so much, Zara. So on the next slide, I will talk about the different job categories, the 4 main ones that are at the UN. So on the top of your screen, you will see the field service category on the left, and then the general service category on the right. These are the lower level entry jobs that only high school diploma is required. So on the field service, they recruited in the different field missions around the world, and they recruited internationally, being that they can work in any of the field duty stations. However, the general service are recruited locally. So that means that they can only work in the duty station they are recruited in. So the kind of job they do would be primarily administrative and logistical support. They do very important work. And so for those who have not graduated yet, even with a bachelor's, this is a great way for you to gain experience at the UN if you're locally in New York. And this is example for me. That's how I started when I was attending Baruch. I came on a temporary basis on the general service level, because at that time I hadn't graduated yet, but I came in on a temporary position during the General Assembly and got a sense of what the UN was about. So once I graduated, I continued to stay. So at the bottom is a professional level category. That's for graduates such as yourselves with bachelor's, master's, etc. On the left bottom are those that are internationally recruited, meaning that they can work in any of our duty stations around the world. And an advanced university degree is required. Or if you don't have that, you can also apply with a first level university degree. However, with that, you will need 2 additional years of qualifying experience. And then we have the national professional officers. These are kind of like the general service local recruits. They're professional level, but in terms of its type of recruitment, it's a local recruitment. So they can only work in that specific duty station. So the requirements are the same. They're professional level jobs. So advanced university degree, or if you don't have that, a first university degree applies. For more information, you can go to our careers.un.org website to check that out. So on the next slide, I'll explain more about the experience requirement for these professional level positions. So these are experiences required in addition to our university degrees. On the P2 level, P2, which is the entry level, no experience is required. However, you must pass the YPP, which is a Young Professionals Examination, which I'll be speaking about shortly. Or if you are in the language field, you can pass, if you pass the language recruitment examination, then no experience is required. So these are for regular budget level positions, regular jobs on the P2 level. But if you don't take the examination, you can qualify for the P2 with 2 years of experience. But keep in mind, those jobs are temporary. So for a regular P2 level job, you have to pass the examination. And then we have the P3, which requires 5 years of experience, P4, 7, P5, 10, and the director level D1 and 2, which is 15 years. So for those levels, a master's degree or this amount of years. However, if you don't have the master's, a bachelor's is good, as I mentioned, but you will need 2 additional years. So for example, for the P3 level, you only have a bachelor's. In addition to the 5 years, you need 2, so it will be 7 years that will be required. So I hope that's clear. So next, moving along. We will talk about the entry points for career professionals such as yourselves. So in general, we have regular job openings, as I mentioned, for permanent positions that are advertised throughout the year, throughout the UN global system. And then we have temporary job openings that become available. Let's say somebody goes on assignment or there's a special project. For example, let's say during the General Assembly in August, September to December, there's a lot of recruitment that takes place, or somebody goes on maternity leave, just to fill those short-term need for capacity. You have those temporary job openings. And then we have internships, which we'll be speaking in depth about in the next slide. So internships are a great way to come in and gain experience, because no experience is needed to come in as an intern. Then we have the Young Professionals Program. I will save that for another slide, but that's an interesting way to come in as a young professional without experience to start a career at the UN. Then we have the Junior Professional Officers, the JPOs. These are also entry level, just like the young professionals. They're both on the P2 level. However, for the JPO, your government has to sponsor you, because the salaries and entitlements, everything is paid by your government. So these young professionals come in and gain experience on the international level, and some of them stay and some of them go back to their countries to work there with that experience. Then we have consultants and individual contractors. These are temporary appointments, but excellent way to come in with your expertise and work at the UN for a short duration on different projects. I will speak in depth about that on another slide. Then we have the language competitive examinations. As Zara mentioned, the UN has 6 official languages and 2 working languages. And so for these 6 languages, we give annual examinations called the Language Competitive Examinations, LCE. So what that does is find qualified language professionals to come in and work for professions such as editors, translators, verbatim reporters, interpreters, etc. So for those who pass the exam, they are placed on a roster. And once the departments that need these language staff, the openings become available, they select off that roster. It's a very good way to come in on the entry level P2 with no experience, but with that, having had the license in those languages, or on the P3 level, if you have 5 additional years of experience to come in and work in the language field. Then we have UN volunteers. This is also an excellent way to come in and gain experience for young people such as yourselves. And the UN volunteers are actually, they do get paid, even though we say volunteers. So I have another slide that will explain in depth about that. There's more information, detailed information about this at our careers.un.org. So now let's talk about the Young Professionals Program, YPP, as we mentioned. The United Nations, we are very aimed at equitable representation. And so the 193 member countries of the United Nations that I mentioned, we seek to promote that all the nationals are equally represented in our staff population, depending on a certain criteria that we use. And so there's a list of about 100 and something countries that are underrepresented. Sorry, about 70 countries in general. It changes as time goes on. About 50 to 70 countries that are underrepresented in the UN staff population. So for this group, we give an annual examination. And by the way, the United States is one of them. They are underrepresented. So every year, we give an exam for these nationals to compete, young professionals with a minimum bachelor's degree to come in and start careers at the UN. So the requirement is to be a national of one of those countries, underrepresented, a minimum first level university degree, a bachelor's or equivalent in the relevant area of the exam. So for the relevant area, every year this is determined depending on the needs of the organization. So 1 year could be administration, political affairs. Usually it's about 3 or 4 areas. So 1 year, let's say political affairs, statistics, administration, legal affairs, public information, it varies. So you have to be 32 years or younger by the end of the year of the exam and be fluent in either English or French. And as I mentioned, to start a career on this entry level, no experience is required. You just simply have to pass the exam and be a national of one of those countries. For more information go to careers.un.org to learn more about this annual examination. And it's usually advertised in the summer, sorry. So this year's has not been advertised yet. So keep an eye on our careers website and on our Facebook page for more information. So next, we're going to talk more about internships, and we have a short video that we want to show you before we proceed. And after that, I invite my colleague, Lorena, to join us all the way from Brazil to speak to you about her internship experience and also about the requirements to become an intern at the UN.
I applied because my background is in medicine. I'm a physician from India, and working in the medical services division at the United Nations was a very intriguing opportunity for me.
I applied to an internship at the United Nations because it's always been a dream of mine, and one of my aspirations is actually to work within politics in some kind of capacity. So this was a good start.
I want to work at international organization, non-profit, and social enterprise, utilizing the skill set I learned here.
On a daily basis, I actually work on data analysis and data visualization on Power BI, which is a very powerful tool that I've learned in United Nations. I also work on updating our new intranet with web pages.
I applied because I always wanted to work at the international organization, and I've graduated this May from my university, so I wanted to gain useful experience working with international law and investment law.
I'm the graphic design intern, so my tasks range from creating graphics for the human resources portal or creating brochures. I wanted to gain more experience and work with an organization that helps so many people.
My job is more about like cost-benefit analysis to help like UN staff to work more efficiently and effectively. Yes.
From my time at United Nations, I learned that it is up to myself to decide what I can and cannot achieve. My advice for future candidate would be don't wait out. Have a purpose for your time at the United Nations. Always know why you started out at the United Nations and why you're involved in a project you're involved in. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. People at the United Nations were once in your shoes, and they are always willing to help you out.
आओ हमारे साथ काम करो.
和我们一起工作.
Trabajen con nosotros.
Работайте с нами.
Work with us.
一緒に働きましょう.
Hi, thank you everybody for being here. It's really nice to see so many people interested in learning a little bit more of how to get into the UN. And to start, I'd like to share a little bit of my experience. So as Joanne introduced me, I am an intern in the Diversity and Outreach section, which is within the Office of Human Resources. And for a long time, I wished to work for the UN, but to be honest, I thought that it could never happen, and it seemed just so far away. And I'd love to encourage all of you who also have this great desire to try. I won't lie, it can demand some effort to prepare applications, and usually you will have to apply for many vacancies, as I did. But it is truly worth it. So I'm going on my final 6th month, and I was able to meet a lot of people and learn with each one of them from all around the world. I learned about the UN structure and having this inside experience, which is really good to actually see if you really like it or if you would choose another path in your career. And it is also, of course, a great professional and learning experience. To say a little bit on my daily activities, I participated with meetings from many people and from many entities of the UN. I participate in outreach events such as this one, and writing content, emails, organizing databases, spreadsheets. So it's a little bit of everything. Well, to be eligible to an internship, you must be on the final year of graduate school or after that, fluency in English or French, but of course, other languages are also very good, mostly the UN official languages, as Zara also mentioned. So Arabic, Chinese, English and French, Russian and Spanish. The duration is with a minimum to 2 months to a maximum of 6 months duration. It is unpaid, but of course it offers a lot of experience opportunities, and it is full-time. Please to the next one. The application period, it varies. Some, for example, are open the whole year, and others could be there for only a month. So it is really important for you to make sure and check the job openings regularly. The applications are advertised on the careers website, as well as other options, as Joanne mentioned. And once you choose one to apply, you will go through an application process, and we'll explain a little bit further. The selection period also can vary, but it lasts approximately 2 months. Starting dates must be coordinated between interns and the recruiting officer, but in my case, they asked me to start as soon as possible. So the moment I got all my documents approved and went through onboarding, I already started working. The required skills are analytical, communication, interpersonal, and as well as language skills. Online opportunities are available mostly now during the pandemic, and they're good for example, I would probably not be able to go to New York and work there. So it was really good for me to have this experience, and it really expands for more people to be able to participate. You should also check in the application in the job opening, because sometimes they usually will say there when it is remote, when it's optional, and so on. Once you finish your internship experience, you will get a document showing that you had that experience. So it is also good for your background and for future opportunities. And it's also important, I would like to say this note, that differently from what usually happens in the private sector, that if you show good work, you might be hired. In the UN, it is a little bit different. So you must always apply for a different opportunity to become a staff. This is a little bit of how the internship works, and I hope that you will try and that this is an encouragement for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zara. So I noticed a couple of questions. Let me just answer while in there. Somebody's asking how long graduate school. As long as you're in your final year, or you've graduated, or you're in graduate school, doesn't matter. It has to be at least minimum in your final year of your bachelor's or beyond. So you could have graduated already. There's no limit like that. Okay. And then somebody had asked about stipends or grants. For the UNHQ specifically, we don't give that, but that's why I pointed out the bigger, broader United Nations picture. UNICEF, UNDP, all those other entities, don't forget to check them out, because they also offer many internship opportunities in different formats. For example, UNICEF pays their interns. UNOPS does, some of them have different programs, etc. So keep that in mind. At the end, we will have a discussion on all your questions on these entry points. So I'll keep it rolling, but if you've asked a question and we haven't responded, don't worry, we'll get to that once we reach the open discussion section. So now let me talk a little bit in depth about consultancies. These, when I first joined the UN, they usually used to be like older people with lots of experience. Now, over the last 5 to 10 years, it's usually young professionals like yourselves, fresh out of college or with a few years experience, etc., who are very good experts in their area, who come in as consultants. And we've noticed that they come in with very, very valuable skills. And so they're highly valued within the UN because they come in with fresh ideas, you know, as the youth. So these are examples of what we look for in consultants. They are results-oriented specialists in a specific area, and the functions are advisory or consultative in capacity. So examples of some things they do: problem analysis, directing seminars or training courses, preparing documents for conferences and meetings, writing reports on topics within the area of expertise. And the maximum duration is 24 months in a 36-month period. So what you can do to become a consultant is to go to our careers.un.org website and register yourself with all your background. You get a chance to create your profile, sort of our version of the resume online. And so the hiring managers will see your information will be in the roster for consultants. And then any hiring manager looking to recruit a consultant will be able to see you. We also advertise positions that become available in consultancies, and you can also directly apply in that capacity. So don't forget to check it out, because this is a great way to gain experience, to build up your resume. So moving along, we will talk about UN volunteers. As I said, this is an excellent way, especially if you're very adventurous and like to work in multicultural environments, and especially the sustainable development goals that I spoke about, all these very important initiatives. UN volunteer work is a good way to join the UN in that aspect. So we have 3 types of volunteers. We have the standard volunteers, and they have to be 25 years or above. And then we have the youth volunteers. They engage in, it's a youth engagement. Like I said, we like to engage the youth because we believe the youth come in with very good ideas. There's no way the UN can move forward without the input of the youth. And this is what our Secretary General strongly believes in. So there's a strong emphasis on youth engagement. So especially within the area of sustainable development, as I said. So for the youth, they have to be between 18 and 29 years of age. And then we have online volunteering. We had this even before the COVID started. So it's a great way if you're not someone who wants to travel, you can still participate in UN volunteer work and be part of all these great initiatives. So it's a partnership between the UN entities, governments, public institutions, and civil society organizations. So to become a UN volunteer, you have to register yourself at you see the website on your screen at the UN Volunteers Global Talent Pool. So you get to put your experience up there, and any entity looking to find volunteers in your field will try to match you, and then you'll be selected, invited to become a volunteer for the UN. And as I mentioned, we do pay our volunteers. So technically it's not volunteer work. So next, I'll speak briefly about the entitlements and benefits. So our salary is competitive, but at times, if you compare us to the private sector or some other international organizations, ours may not be totally up there. However, when it comes to the area of benefits, we are highly competitive. So for staff that are recruited on the international level, we have something called education grants, that your child's education all the way from kindergarten through the first year college is a portion of it. A portion of a reasonable amount is subsidized by the UN. And then we also have the dependency allowance. So if you have a spouse that makes less than a certain maximum threshold that we set, you get an allowance for that spouse, or any child 18 years or younger, there's an allowance you get. Then again, for those on the international level, we have something called rental subsidy. So a portion of your reasonable rent is subsidized by the UN. Then our pension fund is a very robust one. If you are recruited in a regularized manner where you're on a full-time basis, you get to contribute into the pension fund. And this is something that grows as you're working through your career. And once you retire, it's a nice cushion for you to retire with. Then our health insurance, it's global and very robust in terms of coverage. So this is for you and for your dependents, your spouse, your children, etc. And then we also have our annual leave, which is 6 weeks out of the year. That is paid leave that you can take for rest and relaxation, I guess. And then for maternity leave, for young mothers, for new mothers, sorry, it is 4 months full pay that is covered. We didn't forget our fathers. We also have paternity leave, which is 1 month that is given full pay to take care of a newborn. And also working with the UN, if you listen to the video about sustainable development, it's a lot of initiatives that helps promote the welfare of the global citizens. So if you're someone that feels rewarded to be part of a team that works to make the world a better place, then of course you will get that intrinsic reward. It won't just be just financial, but you get the satisfaction of being part of a team that works to make the world a better place. So we hope we have inspired you. Now, moving on to the next slide, we will give you some tips about the job application process. So here she is, Selena, my colleague, will now take you through the application process and give you tips about the soft skills in terms of the competency interview process, etc. So over to you, Selena. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, and good afternoon, Baruch. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. As Joan mentioned, my name is Selena Brown, and I hope, as Joan said, that we have inspired you to apply. And what I'll be doing is just taking you briefly through the application process. Because I'm sharing, I'd like to focus on the PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to turn off my video. Okay, so for any job in the UN Secretariat, it's important to know that you actually go online to careers.un.org. That's where you'll find any job within the Secretariat. And I will be giving you a little more details as we go through that process. So basically, the first thing is to search for vacancies, and based on what was presented, perhaps you have a sense as to what you're looking for. And the next step would be, once you have selected the vacancy that you're interested in, is to create an online profile, which we call a PHP, and submit your application. And the next step is evaluation and assessment. And I'll just speak a bit more about that because it's important, and we'll delve into that a bit more. Part of the evaluation and assessment is the first part is a screening of eligibility against the minimum criteria. And I'll be talking a bit more about that because that's so crucial in terms of sharing some tips that might be helpful for you. So once you have actually passed the eligibility criteria, the next step would be to perhaps invite you to a written online assessment, or it could be a combination of multiple choice question or essay questions. After that actually is where we might invite you to a competency-based interview. And this is what I'll be speaking a bit more about later also. And finally, there are some steps that are involved and time factors that are involved in terms of the final selection and notification. So we'll talk more about that also. But for the application process, I just wanted to point out, because it's very important to know that the UN does not charge a fee at any stage of the recruitment process. Not the application, the interview, the meeting, the processing, training, or anything of that nature. So there are jobs that are being advertised and offer falsely state that from the UN. And it's important to know that there is no charge that's involved. So here's where the careers portal, we call it, you go to UN careers.un.org, and this is where you'll find all the jobs in the UN Secretariat. And first, you're seeking to search. If you see right here where it says search job openings, this is where you'd actually search for the specific job that you're interested in. Based on the category that Joan had actually indicated, you just, by the way, there is not a free flow in terms of the search. We're actually working to improve that. But right now, it's just a drop-down menu for the different categories, the levels, the job network that Zara mentioned. You can search by department, you can search by duty station, and also the date that it was posted if you have a sense as to when it's posted. So once you have searched for that job itself, you create an online profile, which we call PHP. For you, you're more familiar with it being called a resume. You apply for the relevant job, and then it's also to encourage you also that once you search for a particular job, perhaps there might be others based on your interests, based on the category. You can also set automatic email job alerts for positions that perhaps it's not yet there, but it's your interest. So if it's posted, you'll be automatically notified that the position is available, and you can simply apply for that. Okay, so the job application, let's just speak a bit about what we call the PHP. It consists of 6 sections: cover letter, personal information, education, work experience, languages, and references. And just to keep in mind, and I'll focus on 2 particular areas from this, the cover letter. So your aim in the cover letter is to describe how your experience, qualifications, and competencies match the position for which you are applying. So think of your cover letter as an opportunity to distinguish yourself from the other job seekers by highlighting what makes you a good match for the position. You also want to keep it brief, keep it concise, maybe 3 to 4 paragraphs or so, and ensure that it's targeted as much as possible to the position for which you're applying. And focus on the most relevant parts of your background that relate to the job opening. And also for references, so those are the 2 areas that I will just quickly speak about. For reference, this section, you list 3 persons as contact references who are familiar with your character and qualifications. Could be a present or past supervisor or colleague, not a family or friend. Just keep that in mind. And I'll speak a bit more on the next screen about the other aspects of the PHP. So as I mentioned before, there's an evaluation criteria that is set up. And it's important to note that education, experience, languages, and competencies are the key areas that will initially screen you out or screen you in for the application itself. So keep that in mind. So for example, education. If you have the required qualifications, you should always indicate your first level of degree as, for example, bachelor's degree. And if it's a master, you indicate that's a master's degree. And keep in mind that you do not select certificate or diploma, as this is not recognized as a degree by the system. Also, it's important to also have an end date and also indicate that your degree has been obtained. Keep that in mind, that would be an aspect that perhaps could actually screen you out. For work experience, the UN needs to know all of your work experience history. Make sure to list all your work experience, even if it's just back a few years. Don't forget to list your current job in your PHP and indicate an end date on all your previous jobs and make sure all dates are consistent. And highlight 5 to 10 outcomes or deliverables under achievements. For languages, it's important to include your mother tongue. That's one area that many people might miss out on. For example, if you only speak English, you might just assume that you don't need to indicate that, but it's important that you do that. If you do forget, it would automatically reject your application. So fluency in a language is defined as being fluent in all 4 areas: reading, writing, speaking, and understanding. So it's important to keep that in mind. And also just to mention that there are competencies that are actually listed on the job application that you will be assessed on. And this is what we call competency-based interviewing. So if I move to the next screen. So competency-based interview, also called behavioral interview, is based on the concept that past behavior and experience is the best indicator of future performance. So your talents, skills, and abilities, knowledge, and experience in handling a variety of situations is what is being assessed. So there are actually 3 categories that is divided in: the core values or core competencies and managerial competencies. And these are the types of questions that you will receive during the interview. So it's important to note these, and these are ones that will be on the job application. So it's important to prepare for the competency-based interview based on what's on the job application. So values, when we talk about core values, we're talking about shared principles and beliefs that underpin the organization's work and guide actions and behaviors of staff. And we see here integrity, professionalism, and respect for diversity. I must point out that professionalism is one that is on each and every job vacancy. Competencies, the core competencies, these are competencies that everyone, regardless of function or role, is expected to actually demonstrate. So these are skills, attributes, and behaviors directly related to successful job performance. So they're communication, teamwork, planning and organizing, accountability, creativity, client orientation, continuous learning, and we have client orientation again. Interesting. Okay, there should be 8. So there's one, I think it's continuous, it's IT related. Okay, so managerial competencies are vision, leadership, empowering others, managing performance, and building trust, judgment, and decision. And these are for anyone maybe at the P4 level and above who are actually supervising or managing others. So in order to prepare for the competency-based interview, you're not left to your own demise. We actually have this principle. It's an interview technique that we'd like to share with you that will definitely help you to prepare for the competency-based interview. And we call it the call principle. And the reality is that it's actually a tool that you can use to prepare based on the specific competency that you will be assessed on, which is on the application itself. So we have context, challenge. So basically, this is really how you provide an overview of the situation, what it was about, when it occurred, how you first got involved, and I also identify key events and time frame. Actions are covering significant events, specific instances that were clearly attributable to you rather than the team. So for example, if there's a question regarding to teamwork, you want to ensure that whatever information you're providing with the interviewer is related to your specific role as a team member on that particular project or whatever you're presented. They will actually provide you with probing questions, and basically they want to see how you had perhaps your function and your role within that particular team. So results, what was the outcome, impact, or results of your actions? And you may be asked such question as how did it turn out, or what was the final result? And the last, learning, is actually what did you learn from it, the key takeaway, what was your experience? Part of it is really just to get a sense as to your level of maturity in terms of how you deal with challenges or deal with a situation that might be a bit challenging or something that didn't work out well, but what did you learn from it? So keep that in mind, that might be an additional question. So just finally, tips. Learn about the department and the work it does, review the competencies advertised in a job opening and prepare actual examples, match achievements to the competencies, and examples should reflect how you were able to handle the situation, including lessons learned. So these are the tips, quick tips on competency-based interview that I wanted to share with you. Finally, there is a booklet, and we'll actually perhaps provide that in the link or later send it to you that you can actually use to get familiar with the competencies that are listed within the job vacancy that you might be interested in applying. So I must point out that for every job vacancy with the competencies, there are what we call indicators, behavioral indicators. So that will help you to prepare well for the interview itself. Thank you, and I wish you much success in your job application, and please join us. Joan, over to you, or we could talk about this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you so much, Selena. We will begin next with our conversations on entry points. However, if you have, we will focus more on questions that more people can benefit from. So try to, Selena, go back. I'm not done yet. Yeah, so if you have any specific question that is more personal to you in terms of your own career path, you can feel free to email us at talentoutreach@un.org, and we'll be very happy to engage with you and answer your questions. We can communicate with you back and forth. We encourage you also to follow us on social media. We share vacancies there as well, together with other activities that goes on at the UN. So we're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much. Before we start, on the next slide, please. Before we start the conversations, I would like to share a job opening that came up, I think about an hour ago, right before we started this event. The hiring manager reached out to me. It is actually expiring next Wednesday, so it's urgent. We are still not able to find someone from one of those underrepresented countries that I spoke about, especially even women, you know. So I will ask Zara or, oh, you already placed it there. Okay, she put the link there. It is budget and finance officer on an entry-level P2 professional. So it is only 2 years experience that is required for that job. So please click on that link and check out that job. It is expiring. The hiring manager is on standby, and I promised him when I come to this event, I will try to encourage everyone to apply. So please, if your background is in finance and budget and you have only 2 years experience, please, and you're in one of those underrepresented countries. Manny, you can share, not Manny, I'm sorry, Suzanne, you can later on share the list of underrepresented countries with the registrants. However, United States is one of them, China, Japan, so many countries that are underrepresented. So any one of you can apply for that job. So now, let's open the floor for conversations on entry points. Everybody's welcome to talk to us. Remember, we are Baruch College alumni. We were in your shoes many thousands of years ago. So we're right at home. So I hope you also feel right at home in talking to us. Welcome everyone, and feel free to ask your questions. I picked up about 3 or 4 questions while Selena was talking. There was one question about how long does the YPP process take, the exam? It's typically, sometimes there are delays, but in general, it's about 6 months from the time there's advertisement about the Young Professionals Program, the time, the registration period, and then the exam preparation period. And then of course, once you take the exam, you have to be interviewed and then rostered. That's one part I forgot to mention. Those that pass are placed on a roster and recruited from there. And then the next question is the careers.un.org. For all the other agencies, can you find jobs there? For the careers.un.org is for the secretariat alone, the global secretariat. However, for agencies like UNICEF, UNDP, etc., they have their own job sites. Lorena can share some of them in the chat, but they all have their own job site. We're hoping to have one centralized area, but for now, each individual agency has their own website. And then somebody's asking how long is the resume? Ours is the PHP, personal history profile that Selena spoke about. It's kind of like a form, so it guides you. You just plug in the information in terms of experience, education, etc. So by the time you finish filling out the form, it's done. So there's no chance of you making it too long or too short because the form guides you. And then somebody's asking, can you put your guidance counselor or your professor as references? Sure, why not? Anybody that can speak to your professional background. Of course, if you have any job references, that's also good. But however, for the professional level jobs, we would usually go to your employer to find out how long you worked there, etc., to verify the length of employment. But in terms of the actual references, etc., you can put anybody, including employment. So that's the ones I got.
Joan?
Yes.
Actually, Susan, I know it's usually helpful for you for someone to read it and then. So
no,
Susan,
I know. I just picked up a few. So I just wanted to, say that because I already had the answers ready. So I'm gonna hand over to
Susan. No, that was good. Thank you.
Just to make it moving.
Yeah, great. I didn't see this question myself, But a question about international students and visas sponsorship. I think there was one question. And I know that may be different for, say, an internship versus a full-time hire or consultancy. But anything about a student who's working in New York or wants to apply for something in New York, but they're not a U.S. citizen?
Okay, so they have to have, each one is reviewed independently because there are different variations in the type of visas. So we usually coordinate with a department called the Travels and Visa section that would review, and sometimes they even coordinate with the host country, which is right across the street from us. So we communicate and review each one independently. For some of them, I can't remember off the top of my head, some of the visas are able to, depending if, I forgot the name of it, where they're able to become an intern if the area of internship they're about to do is also the same as the field of study they're working in. And then of course, if they are not in that, that type of visa category, you can also be sponsored dependent. If you already graduated and you're coming in as an intern, you can also be sponsored for the G4 visa, which is required to work at the UN. So each one is kind of like on a case-by-case basis. So it's hard to give you a blanket answer. So my answer would be to encourage everyone to apply. And then at that stage, you can review your specific special needs and address that at that time.
Great. Are internships remote or on site at this time? And then someone was asking if they're paid or unpaid. I mean, I think you had said unpaid, but I'll just clarify that. But is the staff working remotely, on site? Is there plans for the fall?
Okay, right now, since March last year, we've all almost 100% been at least for our department, been working remotely, and all our interns are remote. As I mentioned, Lorena is all the way in Brazil, and Zara is in Washington. So because of the pandemic, we're more flexible in terms of allowing remote work. So it's all a matter of, again, once you apply and you come for the interview, you can negotiate in terms of how you want to do it, if you want to come in partially or full-time, and also based on the needs of the office in terms of how the specific job that you're coming to do, how it can be done. But as you all know, there's a lot of flexibility, not just at the UN, but everywhere throughout the world for remote work because of the what we've learned can be done remotely because of the pandemic.
Great. Is it correct you cannot apply in your last year of undergraduate? You have to wait until you're obtained your degree? Or same, I guess, for master's, I guess if it's a master's required role, but you haven't finished yet.
Okay, so at the specific time the job is advertised, it would tell you what the requirements are. So if you haven't yet received the degree that is required, then technically you're not eligible because there's a checkbox that will ask you, has your degree been obtained? And if you say no, it will screen you out automatically. And of course, if you haven't received it, you can't say yes. So it right away eliminates your eligibility.
Okay. Are salaries paid based on the experience or the grade? For example, if the person hired is overqualified, would the salary be adjusted accordingly?
So I advise everyone to apply for jobs that they believe meets their requirement because you're worth what you are capable of doing. So if you feel you're qualified for a certain job, don't be afraid to apply for that because the jobs are graded according to how much it's paid. So if you go to International Civil Service Commission, it's actually published online. The different levels that I mentioned, P1, P2, P3, all the way, the salaries that comes with that. And then we have something called steps. So the steps your experience will add a few additional monies to your base salary. Let's say, for example, you've applied for a P2 position, right? So for the minimum, or let's say P3, minimum requirement is 5 years experience with your master's, right? So somebody at the time of recruitment during the grading, if you have additional years, you will get extra money, but not as much as somebody who is on the next level. So that's how it's done, but there's a standard amount for each level. Yeah, the addition is based on the step. Additional money is based on how much your experience you have, and then you get additional steps. to that.
So sort of building on that, this question of experience, some people were wondering, so if it says I'll give you a couple of related questions in one. If the position says 2 years of experience, so does it have to be 2 years experience in the field you're applying to, or is it 2 years experience in any job? And then does grad school count toward experience? Like, how are you weighing experience is sort of the bigger question.
Experience has to do with the work you've done, right? So, okay, so going back to your first question, I'm confused. The first part is, okay, repeat it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. 2 years, so say it says 2 years experience, does it have to be 2 years of experience for that type of job? Or is experience, could it be just 2 years in any job?
So the job opener will clearly tell you 2 years of experience in international affairs, 2 years of experience in, let's say, for example, IT, so exactly what the hiring manager is looking for and what is required to do the job, it will specifically spell it out in something, right? So initially, in the initial pre-screening that Selena spoke about, it's computerized. So that one, it just looks for the number of years. If it shows 5 years or 2 years, whatever the minimum years it says in the job opening, you will be screened in. But then after that, a hiring manager will actually read it and see, does the person meet the specific years of experience we're looking for? If you don't have that, then you will not be shortlisted. So pay attention to when you're applying for jobs, look at your background and look at what it's saying it wants in terms of the number of years, in what field, in what area of expertise. And if you have that, make sure you indicate this in your personal history profile, which is our version of the resume.
And there's an aspect about it that there is, on the application, there are certain things that are required and others that are desirable. So the required aspect is actually the portion that would be screened out or screened in. And then later, the desirable aspect would be something that the managers might consider based on the number of applicants that actually applied. So it's important to look at what's required, and that's the crucial part that will either screen you in or screen you out.
Okay, and if you see something that says desirable and you don't have it, don't refrain from applying. Go ahead and apply, because the desirable may not be elevated. It depends. So don't let that discourage you. The main thing is the requirement. That one you must have.
That's helpful.
Okay, there was a second part to that question.
Oh, I think you said the answer to this was no, but people are wondering if you have your master's, if you've done some master's level work, like academic work, can that be counted toward experience?
Master's level work. If it's a work, I would put it in. I would put it in.
When I say work, I mean classes.
Oh, classes.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean, that's part of your education. So that's the area of education, but it's not actual work, because in the end, where we will do a reference check for the professional level jobs, and we need to be able to contact an employer to say that you've done the job. So that.
And I can't remember if you said at this time or if I've heard this before, that internships are counted a certain way.
Oh, yes. I had that in mind. So internships, when you are putting in your required number of years, you want to make sure you meet the minimum requirement. So when you're counting to make sure you've put in what's required, the minimum, keep in mind that for internships, we count it as half the time. So let's say you had a 1-year internship, we will be counting 6 months, right? Same thing with volunteer work. So keep that in mind when you're totaling to make sure you've put in the minimum required years. Keep in mind the volunteer work and internships, we will cut it in half only and give you credit for only half.
Different question. We know that there's an age limit for the YPP. What about for internships or consultancies?
I believe there's no, and I stand correct, there's no age limit for the consultancies.
No.
The YPP is 32 years or younger. But for consultancies, I don't think so.
And the
internships all have
internships?
to do with your area of expertise.
The internships too?
Internships, the minimum requirement, you have to be in your final year or beyond. So normally people with who are older have had more experiences, so they wouldn't typically come for internship. They'll be going for regular jobs so they can get paid. But there is no criteria that says you can't come except that I always only see young people because they're the ones trying to get experience.
So the minimum age is 18 and the retirement age is 62, 65, depending on when you join.
65 actually, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, someone said, I've heard all P-level positions are usually for internal candidates. What's the likelihood of getting an interview from the outside?
No, that's 100% not true at all. I mean, I just shared one right now.
Right.
We advertise, the jobs that we advertise are for the public. So anybody, it could be an internal person or it could be external. It all has to do with who is the most qualified.
Okay. Let's see. If you have a documented disability, can you receive accommodations for the competency exam?
Yes, you would have to mention it. Mention it to the hiring manager because the UN is all about disability inclusion. So we always work, it's very important to us. We work to provide reasonable accommodation to everyone that is interested in working with us. So make sure you communicate what your needs are, and we will work to make sure that we are able to, if possible, accommodate you.
There's one more question on disability. Should a chronic physical illness be listed as a disability?
It's a matter of your own preference, what you feel comfortable in sharing. But if it's something that limits you in terms of doing your work and you need us to provide you reasonable accommodation, then by all means, you have to communicate that, yes.
On Inspira, internship application deadlines and timeframes are available, but how do you know when the post is set to begin? Is there flexibility there?
Usually it's based on the needs of the particular department and how soon they want somebody to start the job. So, and of course, they try to be as much flexible as they can to accommodate the candidate and how soon they can also start. So it's a negotiation process between the candidate that's been selected and the needs of the department. And so they discuss it and they arrive at a reasonable time. But usually they tend to be flexible. If sometimes people have to travel from one location to the other, etc. So they put all that into consideration when they give you the time for you to come.
Okay. Can students from non-UN member states apply? I think this was about internships. I'm sort of losing it on my screen. Or can they apply for jobs? Yeah.
Non-UN member states.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not familiar with a member state, a country that is not a member. I guess you would have to be in the member states. I have to give this to Selena. As far as I know, for those, or we have to get back to you.
We have to get back to you on that one.
Get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
I don't like to give the wrong information because all we get typically are those that are member states. So I have to clarify. And you know, rules and guidelines on policy, it changes so much. So I want to get you the right, accurate, most recent information. So can you jot that down and then we will.
Yeah, so just a reminder, if your question doesn't get answered today, you can email the team at
Talent Outreach.
UN.org. Yeah, exactly. But as far as someone else is asking about the YPP, I'm pretty sure for that, it's very specific countries, yes?
Yes, it's the list of underrepresented countries, which changes here and there. Some countries fall off, some come on. Typically, they range between 55 and 70 countries that are underrepresented based on a certain formula. So it's not like we say, okay, every country has to have 50 people. No, it depends on the size of the country, their contribution to the UN, etc. There's a formula they use. And so what happens is even the US is so large, even though we have a lot of US nationals, they're still underrepresented because we still don't have enough for that size of a country. So that's how we do the outreach based on what countries are underrepresented. And our goal is to try to encourage these nationals to apply for jobs. And as I mentioned, we're looking for a national from an underrepresented country to apply for the budget and finance officer that we shared. Zara, share it again because Jose is going crazy. So please share it with your friends. If you know anyone with 2 years of experience in the area of budget and finance, please.
I'll put that on the follow-up email as well to everybody.
And it expires on Wednesday, so please apply.
Is there a typical number of applicants who apply to positions? I mean, can you give us a sense of how competitive the positions are, including the internships?
Okay, let me put it this way. We get a lot of applications, but I don't want to say it's competitive because you have to look at your own qualifications and what you bring to the table and focus on that. The minute you say, oh, it's competitive, then you're discouraging yourself. Yes, we get a lot of applications. Everybody comes in with their background, etc., that they highlight in their application. However, just make sure, and that's why we gave you tips on applying, etc. Focus on yourself. That's my advice to you. And don't worry about who's competing with you, because when you do that, it's limiting. What you do is a big tip, look at the job opening, as we mentioned, and look at your background and try to really meet it. Speak to that application specifically and highlight all your achievements, all your background experiences that meets what the hiring manager says they want, right? And once you do that, also look at the competencies in terms of what knowledge and abilities, what skills is saying it's looking for. If you have that, make sure you summarize that even on your cover letter and try to stand out. Make sure your application is standing out. And definitely you will at least aim to at least make it to the interview. You know, if you do what I'm telling you, would at least be shortlisted and make it to the interview. And to me, even if you don't get the job, you could possibly even be rostered for the next job that is in the same job family. So that then you're on the list. So anybody, any hiring manager in the UN Global Secretariat, when they're looking for another similar position, they can just look on the roster and call you. You don't even have to, most of the time, go through an interview process again, or they can just talk to you and bring you in. So try as much as you can to make sure you're applying for jobs that you know you qualify for based on what's been advertised, and try to really take time to prepare your application to speak to that requirements.
Does the UN do workshops, like this, but that are just about interviewing, sort of more depth about the interviewing process? Do you offer some to applicants or the public?
I know we used to have a tutorial. I haven't checked it recently on our website. Selena, do you know? That gives you in-depth information on the interview process. And also we do a webinar. Like this one was more in general on entry points, but some of our webinars, Selena does a good job with taking you through the steps, training you on how to prepare for competency-based interview. But as a tip, it's very easy even for yourself. Look at the job opening, right? There's a section on competencies. And in those, underneath that, you will see what you call performance indicators. Let's say, for example, professionalism, which is always in every job opening. You will see that they're looking for somebody who works well under pressure, who is knowledgeable in the subject matter area, who is able to work well in, that type, it's always listed. Or let's say, for example, teamwork, somebody who works well in a team, somebody who is able to collaborate with team members. So make sure with that knowledge, you prepare answers in your background in terms of your past work experience, that you have exhibited these, how shall I call it, performance indicators, and make sure you prepare some narratives from your background. Once you do that, there is no way you can't do well on an interview, because that's how you're scored. They look at the performance indicators, which is advertised in the job opening, and they listen to what answers you give. If your answer, let's say the competency was about planning and organizing, and it's talking about the performance indicators will say someone who can work well with multiple tasks and do well on meeting tight deadlines. Make sure you prepared a very good answer, very good narrative from your background that is describing this type of activity. There is no way you cannot score points at the interview. So that's how it's done. You actually typically have the questions embedded in the job opening indirectly if you look at the performance indicators. I hope that's clear. Mm-hmm. So the workshop, that's what we teach you. Yeah. And of course, the Carl principle that Selena spoke about. You first talk about what was the situation, what action you, the candidate, took what was the outcome? And if it was a case where, let's say, for example, a question was a situation where you failed to meet a deadline, then we like to see that you're talking about what you did to try to prevent that deadline from being missed. And then, of course, if you fail to do that, then you have to make sure you describe what lessons you've learned, right, from that, what best practices you put in place to make sure that that situation doesn't happen again, you know. So then, of course, you're scoring points like that. So that's how it's done.
A student applied for an internship. It's still under consideration for almost 2 months. Does that mean it was not accepted? And I think this is a good question for even jobs. Like, how do you know how long is reasonable to wait and when you just should give up? And does the UN follow up with every candidate?
Okay, let me put it that way. The UN is sometimes accused of it taking too long. It's just a matter of, we don't have like specific people that are like, okay, the only job they do is be hiring manager. These are regular managers that do other jobs, or regular professionals that are working on other jobs. And so part of what they do is also the hiring manager role. And so, and also because of the volume of applications we get, we're required to review all of them, comb through all of them to see that you're meeting the minimum requirements, right? Before we shortlist and then interview. And then sometimes it takes time to put in a panel for the interview. So there's so many factors that play in. And at times it gets delayed more than it should. But for 2 months, if you haven't heard anything, that's not unusual. You will likely be notified. And also it's built in where once at every stage, you can go into the application and see what stage it's at. And if somebody is selected, if you are selected, of course, you'll be notified to come in for an interview or a test. Or if somebody else is selected, it's an automatic email that will go to all the candidates to let you know what happened. So for internships, usually sometimes, a lot of the times actually, it's kind of like a rolling admission because it's an ongoing project. So maybe the 2 months, somebody's already working, and at some point you will also be contacted to come in and take over. So don't give up, just apply for other multiple ones and keep applying, don't give up. Great.
A few people are asking about this interviewing workshop that you referred to. Is that something we could send around in the follow-up, or is that happening now, or did in the past?
We can check, we can make a note of it and see if it's at our careers.un.org website. I was told they removed it, but is it there? I don't know.
It is still there. However, I think there was an issue with the browser where it wasn't able to play, but you can still get some information on competency-based interviewing from the careers website. Yeah, there are a lot of questions that are raised that you can find most information on the careers website. Even on benefits, you can find information on that.
And I think also use Chrome, because I remember trying to play that. Try it in Chrome, it should work. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of grad students here, and some of them have these graduate assistantship roles. Are you counting those like internships in terms of experience?
I believe not. But again, the other UN agencies, funds and programs, they do different things. So there's a chance they will look at that. But specifically for the Secretariat, no.
You mean they wouldn't even count as experience, like research experience or things like that? You're not sure?
For internships, that would count because it's a background, it's work you've done. A lot of the internship work involves research, etc. So that should be fine. But for regular job openings, again, like I said, for the professional jobs, for example, we will be contacting your employer. So it has to be a job that you've worked at, a paying job.
Yeah, these are usually paid. And
they're paid.
Yeah.
So then I would encourage you to put it there because again, each hiring manager could be flexible. I don't know, but when in doubt, just put it there because it's not gonna hurt.
Okay. There's a couple of people who are PhDs. Are there roles for PhD level? Is that searchable, or are they given additional consideration for certain roles?
PhD. I think it gets to the point where at the final stage, let's say there's two people that are equally good, they're equally qualified, then the head of department has to select one. So if they see that you have that additional icing on top of your experience, that PhD could come in as a bonus. But typically our jobs, the minimum requirement is a bachelor's, and then if you have a master's, fine, but if you have a bachelor's, that will work too if you have the additional years of experience. So master's or bachelor's is at least what we need. The PhD would be a bonus depending on how competitive that position is.
If someone applied for the YPP in 2019 and passed one part, but then didn't pass another, should they apply again as long as they're under 30 or 32 or under by the end of, I guess, this year, right?
Yes, definitely, they should.
Okay. And I'm going to throw in a question. Does the UN do separate presentations, like once the exams are announced, will there be something separate or not really? That's not something you do about the exam process, because I know it's multi-stages and whatnot.
We've done it. Like last year we did a few, and then the department that does it, they don't do that type of outreach for the YPP in terms of walking you through, because then it's a conflict of interest. They don't want to be, but they work with the permanent missions. They invite all the missions to give them what you call materials to share with their nationals. So the US would be one of them, where the mission will be invited, and then we'll share materials that they can give to their members. But if a request comes in for us to do outreach, where we give information on the process, we normally honor that. If it's within the application period, we do that.
And any hints, like should people just be checking the website on the YPP, or is there any way to sign up for the public to sign up for notification?
You can email us at the Talent Outreach. We also, the minute we launch the campaign, place it on Facebook. We do a little mini campaign on Facebook, giving information of how the application process, or how, information on what's happening. But for this year, we're a little bit not on time because last year's was also delayed because of the pandemic. So it should come up at some point, at least before the fall or latest by the fall.
Okay, great.
But again, check our website, check our Facebook.
And is that the Facebook for the careers?
Yeah, UN Careers.
Okay.
Lorena, Zara, you can share the link to that also.
All right, well, we're at 1:30. I think we plowed through a lot of questions. Thanks for doing that. And I know there were some we did not get to, and that the team is very happy to answer questions over email. So please do email, and yeah, please join me in thanking the UN team, Joan Ampa, Selena Brown, Zara Farouk, and I lost Lorena on my screen, but Lorena was here too. Maybe she still is. So we appreciate all the time that you've spent with us over these 2 events. We hope to collaborate again, maybe in the fall or the spring, and have you back and speak to everyone. And yeah, any final comments?
Okay, I just want to say thank you to everyone. It was a pleasure speaking to all of you on behalf of my entire team. I encourage you to really keep applying, don't give up, and also expand your search, like I said, to all the different UN agencies, etc. And don't give up, because you may not get in right away, but keep applying for sure, and something is bound to give. And again, I have to say, pay attention to your application and make sure you're completing it correctly, because the initial pre-screening, you don't want to be automatically rejected before your application makes it to the hiring manager. So again, look at the experience, education, languages, and of all that criteria, if you meet it, ensure that it's clearly stated in your application. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions, email us. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank you. Be well, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.